Okay, time for some observations after being at Schneider now for about 6 months. Uh, the ups and downs, the good and the bad, whatever you want to call it. Fortunately, I can't say there's anything too terribly ugly about any of it. Um, so anyway, the good stuff. Working for a large company means you get access to a lot of perks that I don't know that you necessarily get a hold of through other companies. Because they're so huge, they've got operation centers, or I guess distribution centers or hubs, whatever you want to call them. They've got them in a number of places, but the one here in Texas, or here in Wilmer, Texas, is pretty nice. Got free laundry, free showers, weight room, and they've got a fitness guide. If you got some problems, they can give you a bone cracker, or at least massage therapist or something like that. I was having some sciatic nerve issues. He gave me a little booklet with some exercises to do to make sure I wasn't having problems with that. That kind of stuff is just really, really nice. And it's literally a mile from you. But I guess that only applies for folks that are actually near one of their operation centers. Let's see, what else is good about them? The pay is not bad. I mean, for starting greenhorn driver, I started off at 41.5 cents a mile. Then 4 months ago, they did a across the board half-cent a mile raise. But that brought me up to 42 cents. And then after 90 days, I've been making 45 cents a mile. Not great, not bad. I mean, for somebody that I've seen a bunch of jobs listing out there for greenhorn guys fresh out of their CDL school making 35, 37 cents. And I've even seen some jobs listing as low as 27 cents. So not the best pay, but not the worst pay. Their training, it's okay. With Schneider, you get 2 weeks of classroom training, which part of that is just learning how to use their tablet, which is that has your navigation and your what they call workflow. It's not bad. I mean, it's for what it is. The training's not bad. Then you have a week of training in a yard, learning to back, learning to do cornerbacking, turn, and all that stuff. Slow speed maneuvering, a lot more than I learned when I got my CDL. Then there's also after you do the first couple of days slow maneuvering inside of their facility here, you also get to go out on the road with, it's you and a trainer and one other driver. So you get, and it's 8 hours. So I mean, it's 8 hours for several days. So you get a fair bit of training on that. Then once you finish up the 3 weeks of that, then you have 1 week with an on-the-road trainer. Depending on what kind of driving you're doing, they'll put you with a trainer that's appropriate. Since I was doing dedicated work, they had me a guy that was doing dedicated to and from Dallas out to Shreveport, Louisiana, and back. Doing some delivering frozen pizzas and stuff. And then after that, once I started here at the actual dedicated job, I spent a week riding in a truck with somebody, and after a few days, I got my own truck. It's not bad. It's not great though. I mean, after being on the road solo, I've been on the road since my first solo drive was December 19th, and today is July 4th. So I've been on the road solo, completely solo now for over 6 months. And there's a few things that would have been nice to have an understanding of, like, turns out that the guy that I was getting my training engineer with, the guy that I was on the road with, he has a system in his truck called DriveWise. And what that does is whenever you get near a way station, your navigation system in the tablet will pop up and say, you need to enter, just bypass. Or if it's closed, it'll tell you it's bypassed as well. For 4 months, I could hear something in my dashboard beeping all the time at me, and I'm going right when I'm going by a way station, but no clue. My tablet wasn't working. Then finally, a month and a half ago, found out that there's a little thing called Best Pass. It's little, I can't really show from here. It's about yay big. It's glued to my windshield, kind of like an old school pass for going through some of the toll roads. And it'll sit there and beep at you green if you can go bypass it, and turns red if you have to go in. But it took them 4 months of me calling them on the phone, talking to their IT specialist to find out, oh, you need to talk to your driver trainer about that, which driver trainer in Schneider speak is your dispatch manager kind of thing. It's a dispatcher and your manager. I will say this, the folks that I've worked with very few exceptions, are people I enjoyed working with, working for, and there's always going to be somebody you don't get along with or you just kind of roll your eyes at, but overall not bad as far as Schneider is concerned. Um, One of the things is that also in addition to having laundry and all those other facilities, you've got a truck facility here that they've got a maintenance, they can do whatever you need done. I mean, up to and including engine remove and replace and all that stuff. Or they've got what they call their express lane if it's a tire problem or a quick electrical problem, like a tail light out or something like that. You pull up, talk to them, they say, okay, go around, and you sit there anywhere from 5 minutes to an hour, and then they'll pull you through one of the drive bays and get you fixed up. Not always the nicest thing to have to deal with. I mean, since I'm doing dedicated for a grocery delivery, I'm leaving here with anywhere from a half an hour to an hour of leeway to give you time for stuff. And spending half an hour to an hour sitting in line over there isn't always very good, especially because some of the drivers here, or whoever, the yard guy or the previous driver didn't necessarily notate that, oh, you've got a brake light out or you've got a license plate light out. I've actually driven around with a license plate light out just because I was running late, and I started at 3 on that day, and so I had to do 2.5 hours in the dark. Wasn't too worried about it. But when I had a brake light out, I'm going over there and getting it fixed because no way in hell. Let's see, and their understanding about it, they may not be the fastest at it, but if I understand it right, they work on what are called flag hours, and I worked as a mechanic. Flag hours is their little book says doing this job on this vehicle will take this many hours, whether it's a quarter hour, half hour, whatever, and you get paid based on the number of those flag hours that you do. So it's theoretically possible that if you do 7 things that are all listed as a half an hour, but they only take about 20 minutes, you could actually make 8 jobs. You could make 4 hours of salary in 7 hours time. But it also leads to people kind of rushing, although I haven't seen a problem with that really. So far at that place, I've had an emission problem where the DEF pump stopped working, had a brake hose just completely one of the service line completely failed, had a tail light, bald tire, and a couple of other things like some wiring issues, and also had a NOx nitrogen oxide sensor go out. Honeybee, get out of here, little girl. So that's pretty nice because I don't have to see when it's a hell of a lot better having a half an hour, 15 minute to an hour wait over there than sitting on the side of a road waiting for a problem to get fixed. I keep some tools in the truck, so basically, on these damn Freightliners, you need a Torx bit just to get to the fuse box. But I've got some stuff. If I can find it, I'll figure out how to do it. I'll put a picture in it. I needed a vice grip because when I haven't had a problem with it, but some of the tandems, when you pull the lever to release the tandem pins, some of them won't stay locked out. I know some drivers have mentioned you need to use vice grips on that. Didn't have that problem, but I was driving in the middle of that snow and ice storm back in February, and I pulled the release handle to uncouple my trailer. Couldn't do it. It just wouldn't stay out, so I managed to get my vice grips on that. Also had them replace an alternator and one of the positive lead they hadn't bolted down completely. When I was doing my pre-trip inspection the next day, I'm going through moving some stuff around and realized that was a little bit loose, so I used my vice grip to tighten that up. I worked as an auto mechanic, like I said, for a number of years. Stupid shit happens, so I'm not going to be too rough on the guy for making one mistake. Also, when you have to have your preventative maintenance done, you just drop it over there. It takes them a couple of days. So when you're doing a 34-hour reset, or for me, when I went home for a weekend, I just dropped it off. I came back and it was all taken care of. And everything was taken care of. New oil, new diff fluid. I know I'd had a slow air leak. It wasn't enough to really cause any problems. I could sit there and hold my brakes and whatnot, wouldn't see a problem, but I'd park the truck at night, and by the next morning, the air pressure wouldn't be zero, but the warning light would come on. Turns out I had an airbag that had a leak, and that got replaced. So overall, having the access to that has been a really good thing. And just a lot of that, like when I've had a blowout on the road. I had a guy from Firestone come out was with me in not Firestone, Goodyear, sorry, in like an hour and 20 minutes. And being with a big company like Schneider, those guys want to make sure they want to keep that contract. So they might not be busting their ass to get you any faster, but if you're just some schmo in Billy Bob's Trucking, you're probably going to be at the bottom of the list. Also, they've got tire places that you call up, hey, I've got a flat, or I've got a tire running really low. They'll say, okay, there's a tire place that we've got it. They call them a tire bank. Maybe that's normal trucker speak. I don't know. Schneider has so many of their damn things. I don't know. But you pull in, and you're generally first in line to get your tire taken care of. What I will say is that on this particular job, I'm driving a 2016 Freightliner. It now has 400, let's see, pardon the beeps. I think it's 458,000 miles. I'll tell you in a second. It had 411,000, yeah, it's 459,000 miles. I just passed 459. It had 411,000 miles, and it was 5 years old when I got it. Because I checked the sticker in the door, and it was built in January of 2016. So it's a 5-year-old truck. It's not in bad shape, but it's got a lot of squeaks and rattles. Like I said, I had a DEF pump go out, an alternator go out, nitrogen oxide sensor. So the good news is it's not a 2015 or earlier when they had all of those emissions problems, but it's an old truck and it kind of rides like it. I mean, one of the things I hate about this truck is the seat, the pneumatics still work. I mean, it lifts good, and the suspension vertically is fine. The problem is it's got its slop, and it just, I've had a couple times where it snaps my neck back when the thing moves front and backwards. That kind of sucks. And on this account, pretty much most of the trucks are old. There's a couple of them that are 2018 and newer, 2019. There's a day cab that's newer. One of the deliveries we have to make down in Austin is a real tight delivery. They recommend, especially if it's one of your first times taking the day cab, they generally run a 48-foot trailer instead of a 53 down there because it's tight. And that's a newer truck, and they've got a couple of other people that are running newer trucks, but a lot of them still are the Freightliners with the rounded triangular headlights. So that means 2017 and older. And there's a lot of them out here. They don't get a lot of miles. I mean, we don't have any trucks out here that have more than 550,000 on it, just because, like, I'm averaging 1,600 miles a week. There's a good side to that, though. So they don't get a lot of miles, but I'm at the very, very least, I will be picking a trailer up, from a loading dock, hauling it to at least one store, and then docking it back, then dropping the trailer someplace. If you go to Lubbock, Texas, that's what we have a delivery out there. It's more than a day trip. So you pick up a trailer, drive out there, back into a loading dock, unload it, drive back about half to two-thirds of the way, and then you finish up the next day. But there's several times where I pick up a trailer. I've got 3 stops on that one. Do those 3 stops. So I've got 3 loading docks there. Then come back here, back it in, pick up another trailer, do another 3 stops. So, I mean, I can be doing 8 backs in a day, and possibly even 9. I've had one day where I had 2 trailers. One was 3 stops, another one was 4. So there's not a lot of mileage, but there's a lot of use. Good news, you get a lot of practice backing. I'm still not the greatest at it, but so the equipment for this account is kind of crap. Get a little lower, so I'm not a little more in the middle of the frame. But everybody's supportive. I mean, people have made mistakes. I know one of the drivers here evidently dropped a trailer, got interrupted in the middle of the pre-trip, and for whatever reason got flustered and pulled the release instead of doing whatever, and dropped the trailer here in the lot. Didn't get fired for it. I know they got written up for it. I mean, you have to go take your naughty training if you miss something. Also, I think they do have specific training for folks when you're doing your 3 weeks of training at the shop or at the OC. They do specific training for different kinds of work. Like folks that do flatbed training, they learn how to do a lot of the tie downs and whatnot. And the folks that worked doing reefer for Walmarts, they got a half a day with a trainer and 2 or 3 of them sitting there outside of a trailer with a reefer unit, learning how to work it. Here, didn't get any of that. 2 months after I got here, they go, "Oh, you didn't get any reefer training," so they sent me in a room. I watched a video on a Thermo King when almost all of our stuff here, I can't remember the brand name. Oh, it's Carrier. We have one Thermo King, and that's on that 48 footer. Everything else is Carrier, and the video is on Thermo King. I know the basics, turning it on, turning it off. I know some of the error codes, and I know how to adjust the temperature and all that stuff. But depending on where you're working out of, especially if you're on a dedicated account, it can be the training can be a little iffy. I know one guy he's dedicated for Polaris, and I know he spent a full day just learning how to unload and load all of there were ATVs and stuff like that, the side-by-sides. And I know he got a lot of training on that. Also did a very thorough background check on him because he's hauling like, I think 8 of those things, and they're worth 40 to 60 grand each. So I mean, it's between the value of the truck and the value of the cargo, it's up $500,000. So he had a lot of stuff, but I mean, hauling groceries are pretty easy here. The biggest gripe let's see, other gripes now. Maybe at some point I'll do a video on it, but the nannies here, some of them aren't bad. I don't mind them too much. And especially for a beginner driver, having them around to kind of keep you sane and reducing the worker load at sometimes is kind of nice. Obviously the trucks are governed. When I first started, they were governed at 63, but back in December they bumped it up to 65. Doesn't make a huge deal, but there's a number of trucks out on the road that are still governed to 63, and being able to get around them is nice. We've got something, it's a Meritor Wabco. It's a little radar unit that you'll see right above or right below the license plate, and it's used for the adaptive cruise control. So you set your cruise control, and let's say you're set for 65. You end up behind someone that's doing 63. It automatically gets you to the right following distance, or what it thinks is the right following distance, and you'll just match speed with it. What's funny is you're supposed to be 7 seconds behind somebody. You're about 4 when you're doing 65. You're about 3.5 to 4 seconds behind based on this. And if you're doing 65 and you get below 144 feet, how do I know? It starts beeping at you to say, you're too close, you're too close. And if you don't ease off the gas or hit the brakes, eventually you'll get this little red warning that says, you need to stop. It gets annoying when it has these false alarms. Like sometimes you go under a bridge, and if you're on cruise control, it has access to the brakes. It goes under a bridge, it says, crash warning, and ultimately the truck will jerk on you because it thought you were going to crash. And some bridges do it, some don't. Sometimes sometimes it'll do it during the day, but not at night. Other times it's the opposite. Or if you're on, like around here in Dallas, there's a ton of construction and those little the K-rail barriers, those concrete barriers around. And if you're getting if you're going into the lane slides to the side, or you're on an off-ramp that has a K-rail barrier there, and it sees you going towards it at all fast, sometimes it'll sit there and flash at you, and you get a little warning, and sometimes your dispatch / supervisor will get an email saying, hey, and you just say, hey, it wasn't me, just the thing being stupid. And fortunately enough, the vast majority, unless you do something really bad, they know that most of that stuff is. Evidently the thing it's got a G sensor, so if you were to get rear-ended, or if you turn the steering wheel too hard one way or the other, or you slam on the brakes too hard, it sends a nasty gram to somebody up the food chain, and you can get called in for training on that. I've never had that. It is kind of nice because it'll tell you the speed that the truck in front of you is doing, or the vehicle in front of you is doing, even though that doesn't match what my GPS says, which doesn't match what my speedometer says. I pretty much trust the GPS because it matches what my other GPS says. What else? So I mean, it's helpful, but it kind of gets in the way at time. One nice thing about this thing being a 2016 truck is it doesn't have the lane excursion warning. There's a few drivers out here on YouTube that have newer versions of this truck, and it says, sounds like you're going over a rumble strip, but it's actually coming out of the truck speakers. And it doesn't report anything to your supervisors, but it's got a little button on the dash that you have to push to shut it off, which is a royal pain in the ass, especially when you're going through all the construction and the lines kind of go straight. Some lines go straight, and the actual lane goes around, or it's going over. Anyway, it's nice not to have to deal with that with this older truck. The couple times I have driven a newer truck, they also have side impact warnings. And again, going through construction, when you have the cars moving side to side with respect to each other, all of a sudden the lights start there's a warning light on each A pillar, and it starts blaring at you. Scared the living crap out of me. They're like, what the hell? Turns out it's just you got somebody next to you and it thought you were changing lanes, or you were getting a little too close to that side of the lane. Those are annoying, but that's built into the truck, I believe. What else? The GPS is utter trash. I will say in broad strokes, it's better than having nothing, because it can mostly get you there. But it's constantly turning on and shutting off. I know occasionally you'll like in bad weather, you'll lose GPS signal, and I'll notice it on my cell phone when my GPS goes out. But every time it loses signal and it picks you back up, it might scoot you forward or backward on the road you're on. And every time it does it, it says, please, you need to go northbound on Interstate 20 or eastbound on Interstate 20 for the next 23.4 miles, followed by, and just like, shut up. I called it Nagatha, not in the Skippy reference, just because she's a nag. Let's see. Another nasty thing about it is, on the one hand, it's nice for a new driver. You don't have to worry about when and where to get fuel. Schneider has a contract with Flying J/Pilot. That's no big deal. You get good points there. What sucks is they tell you when to stop and which station to stop at, and they do monitor it. Occasionally I'll just blow it off and fill up when and where I want to. I'll still always go to a Flying J, but like since I leave a lot of times at anywhere from 11:30 at night to 4 in the morning, going out and getting your gas at that time of day is a real easy thing to do because there's nobody at the gas stations. So I'll, depending on where I'm at in the fuel tank and if I'm just in that kind of a mood, I'll fuel up when I want to, just because I know I can get in and get out in about 7 minutes and be done. But other times, you'll get, hey, Jaffo, you need to make sure you're gassing up where you're supposed to. You're kind of, I've never gotten a ding for it, but evidently you get this, there's this 5-point system for every quarter you get based on up to 5 points, and based on how many, I don't think nasty grams count down, and I guess if you had like a crash or something like that, you'd lose a point, but you get points for mileage, gas mileage over, like for me it's between 7.0 and 7.2 miles per gallon, whether if you're following the route that the GPS gives you, and if you stop enough times at the stores at the fuel stations you're supposed to, and that's one of the other things. Like I go down to Houston a fair number of times, and we're right off the 45. Like a half mile that way is Interstate 45. Sometimes it takes all the way down to 45 and you go all the way down there. Other times you get off in Madisonville, hook up to, I believe it's US 90, and there's stoplights. There's a couple of 4-way stops. There's a couple areas where we're doing 35 miles an hour, and I've seen goats and cows on the road. But it's 12 miles shorter, and I sincerely doubt it actually has better fuel mileage, but the GPS tells you you've got to take it. I think I've worked a way around that, because if you miss a turn and you kind of get yourself lost, you just stop, pull over. Because you have to be stopped to do anything on the tablet. Stop, and if you went the wrong way and stayed on Interstate 45 too long, and go back into the workflow and say, navigate me to my destination, all of a sudden it'll say, oh, just stay on Interstate 45. That's for when you make a mistake. That's kind of a pain in the ass, but you can work around it. Or like today, I was running late, and I know it's faster. I went down to Baton Rouge, and coming back, I know it's a lot faster to stay on Interstate 49 rather than, again, following these side roads through small towns, these one light or one stop sign towns, doing 25-30 miles an hour, and going by a couple of schools. I just said screw it, stayed on Interstate 49, even though it's like 20 miles longer, because Interstate 45 goes way out and all the way around. But still, then you hook up with US 190 going east. US 190 sucks, though. You're like riding a horse through a lot of it. galloping. But it's still faster. And on the way back, I made sure I did the same thing, because going along a lot of U.S. routes, there's no truck stops. And I'm able to go about an extra 2 hours up just outside of Alexandria, where there's a couple of truck stops I can stay at. Whereas if I had followed the route that it tells me to, I end up stopping on Loblo, only about 15 miles from the store out in Baton Rouge, and it's just, so that puts me further behind when I get back here to the distribution center. So that kind of micromanaging is annoying, and you'll lose access to some amount of bonus, although I have no idea really how it's counted. Like I said, I get paid 45 cents a mile here, which for a beginner isn't great, isn't bad, isn't great. But again, I'm only getting 1,600 miles, but, and it's a big but, we get paid for every time you pull out a trailer. For the first stop, you just get paid mileage. That's just what you get paid for. If there's a second and a third stop, though, or a second stop, each stop after the first one, you get paid $50. So one of the best routes you can do here is from here to Houston, having 4 stops, and then back. You can do that in a 14-hour day. You know, well less than 11 hours of driving, and that's 460 miles, and so that's 45 cents times 2, is about $220 for that. Plus you have 3 stops. That's 3 times 50 is 150. So that's a $370 day. That's way. I probably can do the math, but I don't want to. But when I've done the math, I average about $900 gross pay a week. That's not any bonuses. That's not, they're paying me $200 a month to pay for my tuition because I paid for my own trucking CDL, and I get $500 every 3 months for the first 4 months, or for the first year. So I get a total of $2,000 at the end of $2,000 after a full year. I've got my first one back after my 90 days, and I just got my second one at my 6-month day. That $900 per week average does not include that. So, I did the math, and it works out to about 59 for the 1,600 miles I drive a week. That works out to about 59 cents a mile. Not bad. One of the bad things here is, at least in Texas, and I've heard that Schneider has different health care in different states. The health care option here sucks. It's horrible. If you've ever heard of a health savings account, HSA, and high deductible insurance, HDI, or something like that, it's where you pay $30 or $40 a month. You have a $5,000 deductible, but you're able to put money aside and it's pre-tax, so that you can do things like, you get pre-tax dollars for your your yearly physical or whatever, and it's super cheap, so you can save the money you're not spending on a premium going into that account. Here, it's the worst of both worlds. We've got, I think, a $4,000 deductible, and for me and my wife, it's $140 a week. That's $560 per month for crap health insurance. We haven't used it yet. It's just horrible. You've got, this huge deductible. You don't get to pay $20 copays to go visit your doctor for a physical, or I've got, to get stitches or whatever it is. You don't get that. No, you get to pay the full doctor fees with a slight discount. It's utterly horse shit. It's probably the single biggest reason I'm considering looking for another job, or for work at another place, because it's expensive and horrible. It's basically, way back in the day, I'm in my 50s, when I was a kid, you had Blue Cross and Blue Shield. They were actually 2 separate companies. I can't remember which was which, but you had your general, and then you had your major medical. One of them paid for your doctor visits, and then the other one paid just for extended hospital visits and whatnot. And back in the day, they also had something called, you could get something called a core deductible, because the stuff that your general medical wouldn't cover. There'd be like a gap between the 2 insurances, so you need some kind of core coverage. But anyway, this is neither, or it's just the major medical. Basically, you're paying $500 a month to make sure, in case you get into a major car accident or you have cancer or something like that. It's to keep you from going completely broke. That's horrible. You've got VSP for your vision, which is kind of standard. You're not eligible for health care for 90 days. You're not eligible for the dental care for 6 months. Now, you're not paying into either of them until you're able to get covered. But yeah, the benefits, at least in Texas, are crap. What else? As I mentioned, the GPS is utter crap. The tablets, what they're trying to do with it is really cool and really interesting, but it really doesn't work. There are too many things. They give you pop-ups to remember to do some things, but not for others. Like when you finish one of your work assignments, you'll drop the trailer, and a pop-up will say it'll get you to do your DVIR on your trailer. Cool, great. But when you first pick up your load, and it doesn't really specify that you're supposed to do a pre-trip inspection, but that's kind of a given. But one of the things that you have to do whenever you get a load is you have to put your load on your hours of service. You have to do your bill of lading number, your specific route numbering, and what the trailer number is. You have to remember to do it manually. It's like, why not at the end? It's like, why isn't there just a button to say, okay, I finished this. I typed in the trailer number. I typed in the bill of lading number, and I've got all that. Why doesn't it auto-populate or just say hit here to move it over to your hours of service? I kind of hinted at it. When you're moving, your tablet is worthless for anything other than GPS, and you can't do anything with the GPS other than you can shrink the scale, or you can zoom in, zoom out. You can change the brightness and a few things like that, but I mean it's locked. So if you want to reroute, like, oh crap, I missed my route, and you're on Interstate 35 going through downtown Dallas, either you take a chance and pulling off on a stop, because you sure as hell aren't stopping on the shoulders that are only about 4 feet wide, or you keep driving until you get to the outskirts of town and re-click it again, because this will not automatically reroute you to where you need to go. It's not like your Google Maps that'll automatically reroute you. It just sits there and screams, out of route. Go back to where you came from, or find another route. Absolutely useless. When it loses cell signal, I mean, sometimes it just completely loses it. It blanks out. Oh, and in addition, when you've lost your signal, it no longer tracks where you are on the map, or doesn't always track you where you are on the map, and it no longer tells you what street you're supposed to be getting on, or what exit number you're looking for, what route number you're looking for, or interstate you're looking for. It just goes blank. It just says, go to route behind you. It's absolutely worthless. Probably the single most infuriating thing about being a Schneider driver is that GPS. And the fact that you're basically leashed to it unless you kind of like figure a workaround. But I guess that's it. I've been going on for 30 minutes. Overall, a slight thumbs up. I mean, for a beginner driver, I'd give Schneider a thumbs up. I'd say it's not a bad place to learn. There are definitely worse ones. And within 4 weeks, you're getting paid for your training. You're getting paid for your over-the-road training, and it's all relatively short. And you're out on the road making full-scale pay when you're done. The pay overall isn't the greatest, and even though I've heard Covenant just bumped their OTR pay up to 62 cents, although I think most of that's team driving. I've heard a couple of other companies are now starting to bump up into the 60-cent range. So like I said, I think I mentioned we got a half-cent raise. They're not quite there yet, but I see people that have been driving for Schneider for 10, 15, 20 years, and not just the drivers that grandfathered in from another company, but people that are actual Schneider employees they hired on, and maybe they're making 55 cents a mile. If you're long-term, I can't see staying here long-term, but for a short-term, I'd say it's a pretty good thing to go. Anyway, talk to you guys next time. Bye.